Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Swish City. We're going to be diving in back into those power rankings of the NBA teams. If you guys missed the previous two videos, go check them out on the Brooklyn Nets and the Washington Wizards. But in today's video, as you guys can see from the thumbnail, we're going to be discussing the Portland Trailblazers. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. They are coming in at number 28 on my power rankings and my worst team to finish in the Western Conference. So in the similar videos that we discussed with the Nets and the Wizards, we're going to be going over the additions, the subtractions that the teams made, some players that I like going into this direction with this team, and some players that I'm not really too fond of for this organization sticking long term. And then we're also going to be diving in, looking at their record prediction going into next season as well. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Make sure to grab a snack and get ready for this episode. So, like I was discussing in the introduction, we're going to be going over this Portland Trail Blazers team. And ultimately, they are a young, hungry squad. And I was debating between another team as well, kind of competing with this bottom team in the Western Conference. But ultimately, I landed on the Trail Blazers due to the fact that I don't necessarily know if they're going to be fully healthy throughout the entire year. And when you look deeper and deeper there on this team, it gets very thin. So, let's dive in and let's look at the additions, subtractions, and moves that this Blazers team made. The one departure that they did have was their trade with sending out Malcolm Brogdon to the Washington Wizards, in return getting Deni Avdija. Now they also had to give up another one of their first round picks in the draft, which I think was totally okay as this Blazers team already had enough young talent in it, and they ended up giving up one of their positions where they had an abundance of players in a guard and Malcolm Brogdon, giving up one of their veteran pieces who was a little bit injured last season for a young wing in Deni Avdija, who I think is going to be absolutely fantastic for this team. Now we'll get into that some more. They also did add Devonte Graham as well as he was bought out, and I'm not going to lie, I did forget about this addition for the Blazers. Now when looking at re-signings, the Blazers did not bring back anybody as well, didn't lose anybody as well. This team didn't really have any major re-signings or moves that it needed to do. It was basically full, had some young guys that it needed to bring back, and maybe if they wanted to make one move here or there, they could. And they did make that splash in getting Deni Avdija, but that was the one move that this Blazers team did make this entire off season. Now, when looking at this team's core for what they have built up, it actually isn't too bad. If you want to look down below, one of their two-way deals, they did sign Bryce McGowens, who was waived by the Charlotte Hornets at the beginning of the offseason, right around the Summer League. And McGowens was actually playing for the Hornets Summer League when he was waived, got picked up by the Blazers on a two-way contract after a very good performance after a Summer League game. And basically is going to find a new home in Portland. I really like this move for them. Like I said, he was in the NBA last year. May have been a young piece, maybe not necessarily ready enough for the NBA. But if you're the Blazers, you already have a G League team. You want to buy into a young piece. You're already in that young direction. Go ahead and get a guy in Bryce McGowens. Like I said as well, this team is a young squad, young core. They did just draft Donovan Clingan, who was a very, very solid pick at the center position. Have Scoot Henderson coming back from last year as their number 3 overall pick. And they have an abundance of other young guys. Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, uh, Barry Walker, Duop Reith, Chris Murray, Delano Banton, Tumani Kamara, Ryan Rupert, and much more. This team also does have some veterans in as well. DeAndre in, Jeremy Grant, Denby Abida, Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle, being some of those, I guess so-called veterans, even if they are not true veterans for this Blazers team. They definitely have some NBA experience underneath their belt. And this Blazers team is kind of constructed all right. There are some questionable concerns, which we will get into later in the construction of this roster, but ultimately they have a young core kind of set for this team, and that's what I really like for the direction of this Blazers team. When you hear the names of, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simon, Shaden Sharp, Deni Avdija, Donovan Clingan now getting kind of thrown into this mix, this is the kind of core that the Blazers are wanting to build and kind of keep with this team. And even though some of those players as well might be competing in some of those positions, I think that this will be kind of the core that they try to keep intact. Obviously, Sharp, Simons, and Scoot Henderson all being, some kind of guards that they can play. Even Simon or Sharp playing that 2-3 position, but Scoot, excuse me, and Simons being those guards for this team in the future. Avdija, like I mentioned, is a nice wing that I think is going to help out this squad. And let's kind of get into these additions and subtractions, some things that I like and some things that I dislike with this Blazers team heading into the season this. Like I said, two of those players are going to be Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons. Like I said, I'm very high on this duo. Shaedon Sharpe has had some injuries that have kind of inconsistently not been able to him to fulfill how good he could be in the NBA, but truly I think he could be one of these nice, young, high-flying pieces. He's an incredible dunker, pretty solid on the defensive side as well. His jump shot can get a little bit better, but a solid wing in the NBA and has a lot of promise as a young player. Simons is a player who may have garnered some trade interest over the last couple seasons. Someone that maybe should have been moved for this Blazers squad as he is a little bit older in this rebuild. But he kind of took over for when Damian Lillard got hurt and kind of showcased to the Blazers he could be this young guard that they kind of believe in. And they have shown to do that as well. He, I think, works more as a two guard playing alongside Scoot Henderson, having Scoot being that playmaker and that setter upper, where Simons is that, main scorer for this team, where Scoot is that playmaker and a defender alongside Sharpe. And I really think that this tandem of how I view it, the S cubed trio in Sharpe, Simons, and Scoot could really develop and showcase some nice momentum for this Blazer squad, especially with kind of the variance in running lineups. You can run all three of these guys at the same time, having Scoot, Sharpe, and Simons play 1, 2, and 3. It would be a little bit of a smaller lineup. You can also have one of them come off the bench if need be to have another stagnant guard, but ultimately, this is the direction that I like the Blazers going in. And like I mentioned earlier on the video, the main guy that I really like is Deni Avdija. Now, Avdija had a fantastic season with the Wizards, and in my video yesterday, I kind of broke down why I was perplexed that the Wizards were even allowed or wanted to make this type of move, sending Avdija away. They felt like he didn't really fit into their rebuild, didn't fit into their timeline, but he is young enough to fit in with this Blazers timeline and seemingly just had his best season with the Wizards, and I only seen him growing and getting better after he just comfortably found a role with this Wizards squad. You also and admit him into a Blazers team that necessarily doesn't really have that much wing depth. They have Jeremy Grant at that power forward position. They have Chris Murray, who's a little bit on the younger side as well. Matisse Thybulle kind of playing that 2-3 alongside Shaedon Sharpe, but they don't really have a true slash forward besides Jeremy Grant that's a young youth player. And Avdija can be that player who can seemingly just insert himself and find himself into that starting lineup. Truly, they want to run small. If they look to move off Jeremy Grant in the future and run Avdija at the 4, they can. They can run him at the 3. I truly think this year is going to be a testing year for Avdija, kind of figuring out for the Blazers where he's going to fit best. Is he going to be a 3 for this team? Is he going to be a 4 for this team? Trying to find the best role for Avdija alongside finding their roles for Scoot, Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and Simons to figure out what kind of players they want to keep for this direction. Avdija, they just traded for. They moved off an older guard in Brogdon. I think that they would like to keep Avdija in the system and develop and work around him. So I think that's going to be one of their main causes this year is to find that role and to figure out where he's going to fit in with this team. Now, when looking at players, not necessarily that I dislike for this team, but I just think have a weird fit with this squad, are going to be talking about these two centers and this center logjam with this Blazers squad. Now, unfortunately, since Robert Williams has been hurt and hasn't been able to play for the Blazers, I was unable to find a picture of them in Blazers gear, so you guys are going to see them in their respective college jerseys. DeAndre Ayton obviously wearing his Arizona Wildcats, and obviously Robert Williams wearing his Texas A&M Aggies. But yes, both these players obviously played in college are now in the front court depth for the Blazers alongside the new rookie in Donovan Clingan, who seemingly fell to 7 and was a pick that the Blazers, I think, hit a home run on. Now, again, like I mentioned, this is a big question mark because the Blazers just traded for Eaton last season as he was, one of their main focal points in getting another young piece in this Blazers culture, and he didn't really have the greatest season for the Blazers. They also went out and got Robert Williams after moving Drew Holiday, which I think was just banking on a young piece to kind of come in and help out in that center room because that center room, this necessarily didn't have anybody. But then obviously Ayton got hurt at the beginning of last year and never came back or not Ayton, excuse me. Robert Williams got hurt with his knee and did not come back. And now the rumor on the street is that Robert Williams' name is on the trade block, as they obviously have 3 centers in this system alongside Jeremy Grant, alongside another guy in Duop Ruth, who they really liked last year, who they could develop with the injury of Robert Williams, and a guy that I think they're going to want to keep for this future. Now, even with, Robert Williams still being possibly on the move and someone that I think the Blazers should look to move off of due to the fact that they already have, this center position kind of locked up already, Ayton could be another guy that they could look to move off as well. I know he's making a big time contract and a lot of teams haven't really seen that offensive production out of Ayton, but if he gets moved to a team possibly that has a lot of cap space or a team that doesn't necessarily have a big direction for their future, I think he kind of insert himself at that center position and maybe work and rebuild himself to being a cornerstone for that franchise. A team that kind of makes a little bit sense to me maybe would be the Chicago Bulls. I don't necessarily know if the a deal that could work for those teams might have to be a three-team deal. But the Bulls necessarily have Nikola Vucevic, who they want to move off of. They don't want to. They want to tank. Why don't you go get a young guy like DeAndre Ayton, bring him into that center room, and so there's no center behind him that can really compete with him, and it's just thrown into the gauntlet, develop Ayton, and see how he turns out. If he turns out good, he turns out good. If he doesn't, you try to and you swing and you must. I don't necessarily know. Robert Williams, I could see being moved to a contender, seeing him more utilized as a backup center, as he's had some injury history in the past with the Celtics and now with the Blazers. If he's going to be utilized best, I think he's going to be utilized as a backup guy, conserving his minutes to make sure that he can be conserved and played at his best moments. Ultimately, though, I think if they are to move off of these guys in, obviously, uh, Ayton and or Williams, I think that frees up a little bit more room for Klingon to develop at that center position, especially if you just took your first round pick, a top 10 pick on Klingon, you want to develop him and also help the development of their backup in Duop Reith, who they really, really liked last season, who was a nice piece that kind of grew in their system. Overall, when it comes to the Blazers, I think that the record this year is going to be one game worse than last season's, where they'll finish with a 20-62 record this year, due to the fact that I believe that the Western Conference once again just has gotten better and better over the years. That the Blazers have just seemingly fallen a little bit closer to that bottom, obviously solidified themselves as the worst team in the West, in my opinion. And I believe that with this, struggling of trying to figure out who's going to play in these positions with Klingon being out, I think they're going to prioritize Ayton and Robert Williams a little bit more to the start of the season. It's not really going to work out for the Blazers, and then they'll finally realize, hey, we need to cash in on DeAndre. We need to cash in on DeAndre and cash in on Robert Williams and develop Donovan Klingon, develop this core, kind of figure out where Avdija, where Klingon's going to fit, and how this team's going to work. Like I said, Klingon is going to be a fantastic pick. I really like him. Another player that I really like for this Blazers team as well as Chris Murray. I think his shooting ability is going to kind of translate in him developing with this squad. And once again, like I said, they have barely any wings besides Jeremy Grant and now Deni Avdija. So adding more wings into that system will just be huge. Ultimately, I think the Blazers should look to move off of some of these bigs. They hold all the bigs. A lot of teams need bigs. The Pelicans and the Bulls, why don't you try to make a move, even if it's a three-team deal? Try to make some space, try to get something going, and I think you could find an avenue where you could find a trade, getting it done with the Pelicans, getting them a center. Pelicans moving off of Brandon Ingram, a player that they've wanted to move off of for a while now, and the Bulls seemingly trading a center to one of those teams as well. Who knows? We could see it. Blazers, Pelicans, Bulls, try to find a three-team deal, try to get something going. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. How do you guys think about the Blazers? Do you guys think they're ranked too high, too low? Where do you think they're going to fall in the Western Conference? Let me know down below in the comment section. Once again, I'm enjoying doing this coverage, enjoying doing these power rankings, getting back into the season. So if you do guys enjoy the content, hit that like button. Drop down your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hit that subscribe button because the content is not going to stop. We're reviving this channel, bringing back content through the entire offseason. And once the season starts, we'll have a boatload of stuff to get into. Once again, I'm Bruce Veliz. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out, everybody.